weak, not as strong as Anton's one. It's my first time. Okay.
Don't use mic, I think everyone will hear you.
Do you think so?
Yeah.
Okay, does everyone hear me?
Yes.
Okay, perfect. So yeah, it's my first time at DevClub. So far, I really like it. Both like as a listener, hopefully as presenter as well. So my master plan today is not to screw up, offer you some good time, some interesting topic, and it starts now. So maybe if someone cares, I will also just shortly mention who I am and what I've done in the past. So from my education perspective, started as a software engineer, then I decided to learn hardware engineering, then I decided to make a complete pivot and graduated from Estonian School of Diplomacy. And because diplomatic skills are applicable in any industry, especially when building an international startup. And from job perspective, I'm actually really glad to see like faces from all companies where I have been working. Started in the oldest company in Estonia, the first company, a software company, which was started in independent Estonia. Then worked for the biggest IT consultancy company, which originates from Nordics. Spent some time in Sweden, saw how things are done there, and now happy to be part of the fastest growing technical company in Estonia, which is TransferWise. And when I was interviewed, there was no binary tree question, but in the company there were just approximately 100 people, and now 2.5 years later, it's approximately 700 people, more than 100 engineers alone, and instead of 3 offices, we now have 9. And to start with, so first of all, you all had a tour in TransferWise office, so you approximately understand what's the environment and where we work. But there is one environment which is much more important, which is for engineers, the product engineering culture in the company. So I'm going to take you to the tour and explain to you some principles that we use in the organization at TransferWise. Before we get there, I will tell you a short story about what problem we are actually solving, what's the product about, how it all started, and where we are now. And then I was asked to talk about autonomous product teams, how this stuff works, then what is our concept of being totally focused on the customer and data. Then we will talk about weak code ownership, how it works, how we apply it, what it is. Then we will talk about hiring again, and how we empower the people that we hire. And then last topic of the day will be blameless environment that we try to establish, and honest postmortems. So what we truly believe in is that we can make the international financial system fair and transparent. These are 2 founders of TransferWise and a bunch of employees and models that we bought for one of our events. So we believe that like traveling money between countries should be completely frictionless, and if in real world we have borders between countries, you need visas, things like that, then if you are a verified user of TransferWise, then there should be no borders for you. You should feel like a local when you send money from Europe to Mexico, for example, and it should be as simple as sending money from Mexico to Mexico. So we try to be instant in our payments. The user experience should be convenient, fees should be transparent, and we believe that eventually we will make the market of international transfers and remittance completely free. Sometimes it's actually difficult to explain to people what is the problem that we are solving, because like some person can go to their bank, they will try to use some calculator by the bank, and it will say that there is actually no fee. But in reality, what will most likely happen, even if your bank is saying that the transfer between, let's say, UK and Estonia is free, then they will take the exchange rate, will add something like 5%, and you will end up paying £60 when you are transferring £1,000, which is actually quite a big sum of money. And we try to educate customers that if they do international transfer, you don't see it, Bogdan just slacked about me. So yes, if you are transferring money, then with our service you can actually save a lot of money. And how it all started, we had two founders, Kristo and Taavet. Both were living in London. One was getting paid in euros because he was first employee of Skype from Tallinn, but then relocated to London, was still receiving his salary in euros, but needed to spend on everyday basis pounds. And Kristo had a mortgage in Estonia, was getting salary in pounds. So basically both guys were losing a lot of money, taking into account their salaries back then, because they are really good professionals. So at some point they realized that, okay, we can exchange money between each other, and then we will outsmart the banks. This scheme worked for few months, and then they started to think maybe there are other people in the world who have similar problem, and they made a small website, first version of TransferWise, launched it, posted the link on few forums, and 15 minutes later there was the first transfer, 2000 GBP, and then they looked at each other and thought, okay, what are we going to do now? The rest is the history. The growth has been really explosive, and it turned out that there truly is a big amount of people in the world who have the same problem. And I think why we are growing that fast is because we are really trying to make our customers evangelical. Of course, we are investing into like classical marketing, TV ads, sometimes some posters in the underground, in metro. But the biggest growth is actually from virality that our customers generate, just speaking to each other, telling their friends and family about the service. And where we are today, we are transferring 1 billion pounds per month. Actually, yeah, the slide is 1 billion euros, but it's a couple of months old, so now it's actually 1 billion pounds. And we help our customers to save 45 million euros every month. So before, this money would go to banks, and it's just dishonest because actually we proved that there is a technology that is able to actually leave this money into pockets of the money senders. And just to clarify one question or one topic, sometimes press is trying to like display us as being against banks. It's definitely not true. In any market where we operate, we have banking relationships, and our system only works because we have established friendship with like local banks in different regions, and we are only against unreasonably high fees in the international remittance today. And today we are receiving money from 40 countries and are able to send it to 60. So pretty much the whole developed world is covered, and we are trying to add more and more routes. So currently we have approximately 650 currency pairs from and to where it's possible to send the money. And we have 9 offices, like I told before. So also, as we have so many engineers here, maybe you care about what technologies we use. I will start from backend. We have a big monolith application. When I joined, it was only one application. Then we started to split it into microservices. Today we have 50 or even more microservices. From databases, we are using MySQL and trying to migrate to Postgre. And we are using Eureka service discovery and load balancing and Kafka message queuing and a lot of other stuff. If you look at our stack share, then you will actually find a complete zoo of different technologies, frameworks, DevOps, utilities, and whatever what we use. So there is no clear picture, like what are our standards, and later I will explain why, because pretty much every engineer in TransferWise can use whatever he wants and whatever he needs to solve the problem that he's currently solving. So let's talk about how we work. So we have a really strict CEO. Then we have operation managers, national sales managers, national technical managers, logistics managers. Completely not true. Actually, it's absolutely not like that. It's completely different. We are working in truly autonomous product teams that focus on the KPIs, key performance indicators that they have set themselves. And when they pick the KPIs, the most of all, they think how it affects customers and how it will affect the growth of the company. The growth is the most important thing. Like the main KPI that we are using in TransferWise is monthly new users. So basically completely unique users that never used TransferWise before and are new on the platform. And we measure it on a monthly basis. In fact, we are actually not measuring just the amount of monthly users. We are normally measuring the speed of growth of monthly new users. So currently we are at happy position where every month we have more monthly new users than in the previous months. So actually we started to measure the speed of our growth compared to previous months. Instead of just focusing on how many new users we have, we are focusing, for example, that every consecutive month we have 5% more new users than previously. So the growth is really exponential. And how those teams are formed, actually there is no particular rule how it happens. I think for every team it happens like quite randomly. But I think the system is like so liberal that if a few people come up with idea of creating a brand new team, there will be no problem. All they need is to prove that they have a problem to solve. There is lots of problems, and that they can actually get necessary skills together and start solving it. So from my personal experience, I saw a problem, got 3 people. We sent out the email that there is a new team in TransferWise. We started solving the problem. Half a year later only, I think the team became official, but in this chaotic environment, we acted as like one unit, and that's how the team was formed. And I think stories like that are quite common in TransferWise. So for example, we have lots of regional currencies teams. Some regional currencies teams are focused on only one currency. For example, we have a UK tribe because the UK market is really strong in international remittance. London is a really, really strong financial capital of Europe. So lots of transfers. But if you look at some other regions like Latin America, then on international scale, like Brazilian market or Mexican market, yeah, they are big compared to Estonia, but on global level they are not so big. So there are some teams that take the ambition of covering several currencies regionally. So let's take the same LATAM team, Latin America. So of course they are aiming to expand globally in some particular region of the world. And they are completely independent from the rest of the company. So no one is going to tell them what to do, how to do, what tools to use. The rest of the company expects that this bunch of people, team less than 10, will tell the whole company how are we going to act in this region. So on a quarterly basis, our teams are presenting their plans, which are strongly driven by data. You need to basically mathematically prove that things that you want to build are actually correct and most required by our customers, and that will actually feed the growth. And usually there are like feedback sessions. Everyone in the company can go and see the deck and actually challenge, ask questions. But what is the most important thing is that the team should make sure that they have all necessary skill sets. So they own the hiring. And like if they need to design some really nice, shiny new component, which is, you know, just unique only for LATAM market, then they need to find designer themselves. How they will do it? Either they will go and hire it from like internally from some other team, or they will lease him from some other team, or they will completely hire the new role to TransferWise. It's up to them. Same with product engineers, product people, analysts. So they need to be like sustainable and completely independent from the rest of the company. And only then we believe that they can truly own their roadmaps and be successful. So for example, they decided at some point that Mexican peso is the next currency that they should be focusing on. They communicated to the rest of the company, explained in data why it's so needed. Whatever data you can use, like World Bank reports on international remittance, feedback from customers, talking to customers. I have been talking to customers personally, myself a lot. We are hosting basically sessions with people who we just randomly find on the internet, give them 50 euros Amazon gift card, and then we show them different pictures, ask them where would they click, how it would work. So actually all engineers need to time go and speak to customers. Also quite normal practice is that engineers go and answer phone calls of customer support, also to be just closer to the customer and feel that there is actually a real person who is using our service. And many teams are vertical with all roles completely independent, and then there are some teams which are very vertical. They, for example, payment processing, they are building the payment processing engine of TransferWise, and pretty much every product team needs them because they are building the core processing product that everyone will need. But even these teams are independent, and it's like a marketplace where different teams trade between each other, trying to explain what is a bigger customer impact to cooperate and build some projects together. And if we take a look at the hierarchy in the company, in the end it turns out that actually there is no strict hierarchy from top to bottom, but there is more like a grid of rectangles, and every rectangle is completely autonomous, independent, with own plans, and then somehow it all just works. Maybe because every team just are focusing in the end on the same thing, on the same KPI, and also each of these teams has the most expertise in what they need to do. Cool, let's talk about code a bit. So what is code ownership in this model is basically, like, first of all, one important thing with code is that we don't have any manual testing in TransferWise at all. There is no one to test our code manually except ourselves, engineers, maybe product people, and in the end, the customers. So we need to have 100% code automation, automated tests. And normally, if you send a PR, pull request, with your changes and you don't have unit tests for stuff that you have added, then most likely it will be declined. And if it will be not declined, then we have a mistake and we are at risk, because then the issue probably will be discovered in production. And in terms of code ownership, our goal is that every line of code belongs to someone. When we were living in the monolith, it was rather difficult. I remember the spreadsheet which was telling the class name and the team owning it. So now teams own microservices, and it's much easier because there are clear boundaries in the code. In terms of weak code ownership, so yes, there is someone who is responsible for like every part of the code in the system in TransferWise. They need to maintain it. If it breaks, there is always someone who is responsible and will fix it. But very often in system like that, let's say business team is implementing something new, like mass payout system that we are offering for businesses which are using TransferWise. Most likely they will need to change quite some code in the core payment processing system, because this is completely new approach of making international transactions. So they will most likely need to change something that belongs to another team, is out of their domain in another microservice. And so what we do here is that we allow other teams freely modify the code that belongs to us. And then we just code review and are happy that there are more teams that are well aware about the code that we own and can collaborate with them next time even more easily. So every line belongs to someone, but on the other hand, there is no strict rule that others cannot change it. You just need to inform and cooperate. By the way, do we have any questions?
How big are your microservices in terms of
How micro?
How micro? So I think this is like hot topic right now. I would say sometimes it's like a microservice fever. People are trying to build microservice for like whatever needs and extract everything, demodelize everything. But I think it's not bad. If there is someone who will own it and maintain it, it will work fine, because there is always someone who takes care. In terms of size, I think it depends. We have really, really small ones. I don't know if I'm going to like name any particular like functions, but yeah, it completely depends. But some of them need to be big.
what is the biggest one? What is the biggest one?
Sorry, there's a classic definition of microservice, which means like one team can refactor it from scratch or write new one in 2 weeks, one sprint basically.
We are definitely not compliant to that. I mean, maybe that's an overstatement. I think it actually complies for most of them. So like one of my team owns, I think, 7 microservices. Some of them are like really small ones, just proxying something. and some of them are actually hosting a really complex logic. But yeah, what I see today is that if 1 year ago we were focusing on demodularizing the monoliths, then today I see that more and more there are events when we are demodularizing existing services. Anything else?
I have three related questions. Do you have someone who has a little overview of the picture, how you scale all this separate stuff, and how you optimize it?
What do you mean by optimizing?
So it will work together optimized way, not how all those microservices work together.
Kind of architect, enterprise architect. Looks over
I don't think that we have an enterprise architect, and I think that probably in your question you are right that maybe sometimes we are risking that we will get into a situation when it's so decentralized and so distributed that there will be no one who will understand the whole picture.
I don't understand how you find your bottlenecks when someone is not something is stuck somewhere, but you have no clear overview what's happening all over your product.
So maybe we can then drift a little bit aside to the monitoring topic. Because I would say that at least in services where I'm working, there is a really small likelihood that we will get into a situation that we are not understanding what we do. So we are using quite many like production monitoring utilities. So we are having our own like Grafana nodes that are collecting data, and like whatever it is, messaging queue or like communication with partnering banks, everything we try to load as much data as possible. We are using on-call shifts, so we are getting automatically emails or phone calls or SMSs if something is abnormal. So we are actually setting like internal SLAs on even, I don't know, some queue size level, and if for example like the difference between two metrics is abnormal, then we automatically actually call or notify someone in Slack or via phone. And as whole code has ownership, then there is always someone assigned in any part of the system that he will be notified.
And who checks if there is anything assigned?
So the team owns the whole microservice.
And who checks that there is an owner?
Actually teams themselves. So we are using, for example, a tool called DEVCLUB.EE, where you have a schedule for like being basically responsible for fixing anything that will occur in production, and we are doing it on like week basis. So every week in my team there is someone who is responsible to be alerted and you know, contact any other teams who are also involved in the issue and try to fix it as soon as possible. So it's quite usual that yes, in a system like that you need to be ready that you will have a phone call at night and that you will need to maybe call someone else and try to fix it. And I think that kind of commitment to the product and to the customer is really common in TransferWise.
Who actually approves of creating company, but who approves it and how? And how you can leave a team and a service? Is there abandoned services?
Today there are no abandoned services. Sometimes it happens that the ownership becomes kind of split. For example, in my team is creating a service that is handling all payment, like not initiation, but like pay-in initiation logic for all payment methods, cards, APMs, whatever we use all over the world. And different regional teams, as different payment methods are different across the world, start contributing to the same microservice. So then the ownership becomes split, and basically then we can also shuffle, for example, on calls. In terms of, you asked who approves the creation of teams. I really don't know. I think it's so chaotic. I think so. In my personal case, I just talked with my lead. He said that yes, such team is necessary, and then at some point he made it official. So I don't know how it happens, but I see that teams are emerging basically every quarter, and no one blocks, because like people are already like really experienced and are becoming really good at explaining why they need to form the team and presenting the data of what will be the impact and why it's really necessary.
So basically the existing team leads can let go their developer to a new team, and new team.
Well, as the thing is that teams are also owning their own hiring. So of course there are human relations within the team. And for example, one case, we have a partnerships team. I know that one person is moving away, even two, but one is like going away temporarily to help another team, which is also a usual case in TransferWise. And of course, as they own their hiring, they are all together making sure that they will find a substitute from the hiring pipeline, and they will not get into a situation where, you know, person just goes away and there is no one to back him up.
And tricky question about budgets. Who decides?
May I be very impolite and stop you? Just so that the talk can continue, and I'm sure there will be time at the end. Thanks.
Sorry, we can continue later. No problem. Hiring and empowering. I think one important thing to say here is that in TransferWise, every employee is participating in conducting interviews, so being the interviewer. Especially it's important for engineers because we are picking new engineering hires, and those new developers will be working with our existing engineers. So it's definitely not the case where like team leads or like architects are hiring. It's just normal people. Yesterday I had interview, and I took with me to the interview the guy who has been in TransferWise for 2 weeks. So why not to ask from him? He's a complete newbie. Maybe he will notice something that older beers will not. And empowering is that we try to pick really like smart people who have passion in their eyes and give them lots of power. So I think maybe what is like different from my personal engineering past is that in TransferWise you definitely as engineer have much more you know, impact on shaping the product. You are really on everyday basis together with your team deciding how the product will look like, because it is basically the function of your team. decide how to do. So I think compared to like many other environments where I have worked before, in TransferWise, you really own what you build. And with big power comes big responsibility, of course. So let's talk shortly about postmortems. So when something bad happens, and this is normal, I think in any technological company, even like 100% test automation doesn't help always. Then I think there is never a blame in TransferWise. So what is the common procedure is that people responsible for any sort of production incident will write a really detailed summary with times, number of impacted customers, number of contacts to customer support, troubles in payments operation. Basically, we'll write a really detailed report, and the aim is not to like blame someone, but rather to we have like a collection of postmortems. We have several issues per week. Not many of them are like really serious, but still we are trying to be as self-critical as possible. And like main motivation is to, in the end of postmortem, to write a description how to avoid this problem in future. So ideally, I think it's called mistake proofing. I think this concept came like many decades ago from Toyota, when they are started to minimize the risks of production screw-ups. And here we use the same, and we have a really big collection, and anyone can times to times go and read what issues we had, how they were solved, and how to mitigate them in future. And usually
any kind of catalogs how to find the right?
So no, I don't think so. We have the wiki with a really powerful search engine. So basically you can search some keywords, most likely the related postmortem which contains those keywords will come up. So in that terms, yes. But yes, what is interesting is that usually under postmortems, as it's also sent as email to all engineers in the team, there is usually sometimes long, sometimes short, but the discussion between different involved or non-involved engineers, where they discuss actually, everyone has a little bit of ad, and in the end, sometimes it ends up being like a 30 emails long thread with lots of knowledge, and all of that can go into the like postmortem archive as well. And usually when discussing things like that, many like really useful ideas come up. And what I like really is that still now more than 5 years later, our founder Kristo Käärmann is very often responding and actually taking part of those discussions as well, which I find is like really cool.
But do he also send some postmortems?
I think he's not writing code that much anymore. At least he's not causing anything that breaks production. In terms of commits, not so long time ago I saw actually commit by him. And in production, as we still have this big monolith, which is not completely demodularized today, there is still some of his code living there. So he commits, but he's not breaking anything. So, do we have a time for a final round of questions?
We have 17 minutes.
Wow.
Any of these postmortems is public?
No. I think it contains too much sensitive data about our system internals. So it is not in the interest of our customers to share things like that.
What has been the scale of your biggest fudge up?
The biggest fuck up, of course, not something I can say like by heart, but for me personally, if I don't know, if more than 100 customers are affected, my heart starts already to bleed. And the problem is that if 2 years ago, for example, you can collect 100 people in 1 hour, then today, like for a couple of minutes, you have issue, and then you don't roll back immediately. You already collect lots of customers so quickly. So basically, the cost of the mistake is growing every day. Yes.
How often do teams dissolve when a product is finished or something like that? And second is, if a developer, for example, underperforms, who makes the decision to end the contract or something like that? I understand everyone makes the decision to hire, but don't know.
Can you remind the first question?
Do teams dissolve?
Oh, yeah. Sometimes, of course, yes. So like I said, everyone is very focused on building the growth. And sometimes teams just realize that there is something else in the company that would be more useful or bring more customers. Talking about particular features, we have a great feature called request money, when you can request international money transfer from someone else. And it is perfectly working. I'm using it myself, but it's not getting as much traction as maybe the team thought in the beginning. And today they made sure that they actually found other teams in the company that will take the code ownership, transferred it to someone else to just maintain it, and went to different teams to do something which will bring more people in. So yes, it happens, it's normal. And second question was about firing. Oh yeah. Yeah, this is tough, doesn't happen very often. But I would say like everyone in TransferWise has a team lead, normally the technical lead of the team, and we have bi-weekly ones-on-ones. Usually at least once a year we have 360 feedback sessions when we collect the feedback from everyone on the team and people who you work with. And yes, if the feedback is like really problematic and there are signs that the person is not performing, then I would say the last decision is made by his lead. And those, like I showed, the greed of independent teams. Sometimes, like I see articles on LinkedIn saying something about non-hierarchical organizations and things like that. I think it's never like that. Even in TransferWise, where everything is super flat, within those teams, of course, there is always someone who is actually responsible for others. So it's a chaotic system. It's a chaos, but it's quite controlled one.
If microservice code is ready in development environment, so how long does it take following all the processes to get microservice from scratch?
It's a great question. So usually when we start a new microservice, we don't always, so there is like few ways of how to get the service to production. For staging environments, engineers can set up the like AVS node, for example, themselves, or you can ask. We have a dedicated infra team. Actually, like it consists of different sub-teams with different focuses, but there are guys in the team who are focusing on actually developing this service delivery process, and they normally set everything up. We have like internal release tools, and what is interesting is that every engineer in TransferWise can release his own microservice. Hotfixes, rollbacks, everything is under control of developers. And here, basically, microservice and code ownership also comes into play, that you cannot randomly release like things that belong to other team, but you normally have some kind of belonging to some particular team. It owns some services, and next to those services you will have like actual buttons to release new versions. So the answer is, if you are an engineer in TransferWise, getting the production node today takes 1 to 2 days, and releasing your service there takes, I don't know, 15 seconds.
I have a question about vision. So like you have to have kind of vision in order to move your product forward. And talking about these ideas, and imagine one day you cover all these currencies you have in the world, what next?
So
like, fine, let's go.
Yeah, so your question is completely makes sense to me, and especially if you are talking in the context of our core product, which is just sending money from country A to country B. So I think starting from last year, we have been also dedicating some teams into building some spin-offs next to the core product. So we are taking, for example, completely new directions and adding new features to the system. For example, we launched borderless accounts. The principle of that is that you can have a bank account of, for example, if you live in Europe, you can get bank account of UK with UK sort code in just 1 click if you are a verified user. And we offer holding balances in TransferWise in 14 different currencies and opening bank accounts abroad and getting account numbers. And yeah, this is, I don't know, how is it a part of the whole company mission, but definitely what happened here was that, again, there was a bunch of people who decided that we need to start building something new next to the core product. The team was formed. This team has basically all necessary roles that they need to accomplish their little mission. They have like iOS developers, Android developers, product engineers, like backend engineers, front-end engineers, designers. So they are completely independent and they are adding something new. So I think probably events like that and new features will be born just like that. There are pillars and then there are also values that we believe in. Like, for example, it's not a job, it's a revolution. So I don't know, for me it feels so natural, like looking at the growth, looking at the disruptiveness of the business that we are building. Or for example, we get it done. Yeah, that's the attitude, how you need to build such kind of product. For example, earlier we had a lozung which was no assholes, no bitches. It goes so well together with this blame-free environment. So I think we are like, as a mission, we are thinking about how to build this product engineering culture, and then we just witness what kind of products arise from that.
Question here. To the best of my knowledge, your main market is private customers. How big is the business customer market, or what's the, for instance, if I'm a huge corporation or enterprise, or I want to transfer money from, I don't know, from one department to another, to the headquarters or something like that. Do you do that, and is that the market you want to go for?
Oh yes, we have a dedicated business team, independent, and they are actually building, based on feedback from businesses, some really useful tools. So yes, we have a dedicated business accounts because according to like different regulations, their payments need to be treated differently. We can onboard them, and we have different propositions for them, like mass payouts, for example, transfer once and get this money transferred to like millions of bank accounts in the world. Yes, we offer that. In terms of numbers of such users, of course, it is less than privates, because it's the same in general in the international remittance. But in terms of volumes, as these guys operate with really big sums, they generate the majority of the volume.
Question right at the back. You had one, right? No? Not anymore? Okay.
Okay, thank you. I hope.
Since you're in finance business, you probably have PCI compliance.
So PCI compliance is related only to like holding card details. We accept cards, but like PCI compliance itself is only for it's like PCI payment card industry compliance. But as we are a regulated financial business, regulated and licensed in all markets, we also comply to many other licenses like SSE 16 in US, and they are really similar to PCI, and in different regions there are different requirements. So if we will be non-compliant in at least one thing, we will be shut down very quickly. So we have an autonomous banking team who is making sure that everywhere we go, anywhere we start our business, especially in new markets, that we get compliant. And very often those licenses, like PCI compliance, they have different levels. So you start, when your volumes are little, you start with self-assessment. Then when your volume grows, then you actually start to pass more and more serious and strict audits.
Okay. Well, thank you very much for a great talk.